Ngozi had always known hardship, but she never allowed it to crush her spirit. From the time she was very young, she had learned to wake before the sun rose, sweep the compound, fetch water, and serve food for people who barely noticed her. Working as a maid in a wealthy family's house was never easy, but she held on to one thing: she believed that kindness was stronger than cruelty. Every day, she tried to do her best, even when no one appreciated her. The mistress of the house, Madame Folake, was a woman who wore expensive clothes and heavy jewelry. She liked to show her wealth but rarely showed her heart. To her, Ngozi was not a person but only a servant who could be shouted at, punished, and pushed around. Whenever guests came, Madame Folake made Ngozi work twice as hard, yet she never once thanked her. Sometimes, Ngozi was denied food until late in the night, after everyone else had eaten. Even then, she would only get scraps. Still, Ngozi smiled through her pain. She often whispered to herself, "Better days will come. I must not give up." Those words gave her strength when her hands were sore and her body tired. One day, everything changed. A gold chain belonging to Madame Folake went missing. The house was filled with loud cries of anger. Without thinking or searching properly, Madame Folake turned her fury on Ngozi. "You thief!" she shouted, her voice echoing across the compound. "I have fed you, given you shelter, and this is how you repay me." Ngozi's heart pounded. Tears filled her eyes as she shook her head. "Madam, I did not take it. I have never stolen anything. I swear on my life, I am innocent." But her words meant nothing. Madame Folake's mind was made up. She pushed Ngozi's small bag of clothes into her hands and ordered the guards to throw her out. No one stood up for the girl. The workers in the house looked away, afraid of losing their jobs. Ngozi stumbled out of the compound gate, her eyes red and her hands trembling. She had no money, no food, and no place to sleep. She had been faithful and honest, yet she was treated like dirt. On the roadside, she sat on the dusty ground, clutching her bag to her chest. Cars sped past her, the noise of the city rising all around, but she felt invisible. The world seemed too big, and she felt too small. As people walked by, some looked at her with pity, while others looked with suspicion. In a city where survival was tough, no one had time to stop and comfort a crying maid. Children laughed and ran along the streets, traders called out prices of goods, but to Ngozi, the world felt cold and silent. She tried to remember her mother's voice, the gentle words she once heard when she was little: "Ngozi, no matter how dark the night is, the morning will come." But now, with her heart broken, she wondered if morning would ever come for her. She wiped her tears and hugged her knees tightly. Her stomach growled with hunger, but she ignored it. Instead, her thoughts were filled with questions. Where would she sleep tonight? How would she find food tomorrow? Why had life treated her so unfairly? The sun began to set, painting the sky orange and red. The streets grew quieter as shopkeepers closed their stalls. Still, Ngozi remained on the roadside, too weak to stand. Her mind went back to the moment Madame Folake's words cut through her like a knife. She had given her loyalty, her hard work, and her honesty, but none of it mattered. She was judged not by her character, but by her position. Yet somewhere deep inside her heart, a spark refused to die. Though she was broken, she still believed she had a purpose. She whispered to herself, "This is not the end." That night, as the city lights flickered and the stars began to appear, Ngozi remained on the roadside with nothing but her little bag and her wounded spirit. She did not know that her life was about to change forever. Fate had already begun to weave a path for her, a path that would take her from despair to hope, from rejection to recognition, and from tears to joy. But for now, she sat alone, broken but not destroyed, waiting for tomorrow to bring her a chance she could not yet imagine. Ngozi woke the next morning with tired eyes and an aching body. She had slept on a wooden bench at the edge of the market, clutching her small bag so it would not be stolen. Her stomach felt empty, but she tried not to think of hunger. She stood, dusted her dress, and began to wander through the city streets. Though her heart was heavy, she could not ignore people around her. When she saw a child drop an orange, she bent quickly to pick it up and handed it back with a smile. When she noticed an old woman struggling with her heavy load, she offered to carry it across the street. Each small act of kindness gave her strength, as if doing good reminded her that she was still human, still worthy. That morning, something unusual happened. As Ngozi held the old woman's arm and slowly guided her across the busy road, cars honked impatiently. Yet she did not rush. She was careful, making sure the woman's steps were steady. Among the cars that stopped was a black luxury vehicle with tinted windows. Inside sat Kunal, the son of the country's billionaire president. Many people in the city spoke of him as a man born with everything: wealth, power, and privilege. But Kunal was different from what the stories said. Though he had riches, he valued humility. He disliked how other wealthy youths showed off their cars and clothes, treating ordinary people with disdain. From his car window, Kunal's eyes fell on Ngozi. He watched closely. Her clothes were simple, her sandals worn out, but the way she held the old woman's hand was gentle and patient. He noticed the calm look on her face, even as others shouted for her to hurry. Who is she? He thought to himself. A girl with nothing, yet she gives so much. When Ngozi and the old woman reached the other side, the crowd moved on. But Kunal did not forget what he saw. Instead of driving away, he told his driver to stop. He stepped out of the car, ignoring the curious looks of passers-by. Ngozi, surprised, looked up at the tall young man walking toward her. His clothes were neat, his shoes polished, and he carried himself with quiet confidence. She wondered why someone like him would stop for her. "Excuse me," Kunal said kindly, his voice calm. "I saw what you did just now. Helping that woman, it was very kind of you." Ngozi lowered her eyes, shy. She was not used to strangers speaking to her gently, especially not someone who looked so important. "It was nothing," she whispered. She needed help. Anyone would do the same. Kunal shook his head. "Not everyone. Many people would have ignored her. But you didn't. That says a lot about who you are." For the first time in days, Ngozi felt her heart warm. No one had spoken kindly to her since she was thrown out of the house. She wanted to believe his words, but she also feared this was only a moment of passing interest. Kunal noticed her hesitation. "What is your name?" he asked. "Ngozi," she replied softly. "And where do you live?" She froze. The truth was painful, but she chose honesty. "I have no home," she admitted. "I used to work as a maid, but I was sent away." Kunal studied her carefully. Her face carried both sadness and strength. She stood straight, though her clothes told the story of struggle. He respected her honesty. At that moment, the old woman Ngozi had helped turned back and called out, "Young lady, may God bless you. Few people are like you." Kunal smiled at the words. His curiosity about Ngozi grew stronger. Here was a girl with nothing, yet she was rich in character. "I would like to know more about you, Ngozi," Kunal said gently. "Would you allow me to talk with you again?" Ngozi looked at him with wide eyes. She could hardly believe what she was hearing. She wondered why someone dressed in wealth, stepping out of a fine car, would want to know a girl like her. Fear and hope battled in her chest. I don't know," she said slowly. "People don't usually stop for me." Kunal gave a small smile. "Then let me be different. Sometimes the world is unfair, but not everyone will turn away." She did not answer immediately. Instead, she hugged her small bag tightly. Deep inside, she felt that this meeting was not ordinary. Something about the young man's voice was different from others who passed her by. For Kunal, too, the moment was unforgettable. He had seen countless faces in the city, but Ngozi stood out. It was not her beauty alone, but the light of kindness that shone even through her suffering. As the car engine purred behind him, Kunal made a silent promise to himself. This was not the last time he would see the girl who helped strangers on the street. She might not know it, but their paths had just begun to cross. That day, under the bright sun of the busy city, a new story started, one that would change Ngozi's life in ways she never imagined. Kunal could not stop thinking about the young maid he had met. Her name, Ngozi, repeated itself in his mind like a soft drumbeat. That evening, while others in his father's mansion laughed and talked about parties, cars, and business, Kunal's thoughts were far away. He thought about her eyes that carried pain but also carried strength. He thought about the way she spoke, shy yet honest. The next day, Kunal asked his driver to take him back to the place where he had seen Ngozi. He wanted to see her again, not out of pity, but because something about her spirit had touched him. He found her near the market, sitting quietly on a wooden bench. She was weaving small strands of old rope together, trying to make something she could sell. When she saw him approach, her first instinct was fear. She stood up quickly, clutching her bag as if ready to run. In her life, most rich people had only brought her insults, harsh orders, or unfair treatment. She did not believe kindness could come from someone like him. "You came back?" she asked, her voice soft and uncertain. "Yes," Kunal replied. "I wanted to talk to you again. I want to understand your story." Ngozi hesitated. She looked at him carefully, searching his face for signs of mockery. But his eyes held patience, not pride. Slowly, she sat down again. Kunal joined her on the bench, ignoring the surprised looks of people passing by. With time, Ngozi began to share her story. She told him about working as a maid in a rich household. She explained how she scrubbed floors, washed clothes, and cooked meals from morning till night. She never complained, because she was grateful for a roof over her head. But then she was accused of stealing jewelry she had never touched. Without listening, the mistress of the house threw her out. As she spoke, her hands trembled slightly, but her voice was steady. She did not try to make herself look better, nor did she ask for pity. She simply told the truth. Kunal listened carefully, not interrupting. When she finished, he felt a deep respect for her. Here was a young woman who had faced so much cruelty, yet she still carried herself with dignity. You have suffered unfairly, Kunal said gently. But you have not let the world break you. That is strength. Ngozi shook her head. Strength? She repeated. No. I am just trying to survive. Surviving is also strength, Kunal replied firmly. For a long moment, silence hung between them. The sound of market sellers calling out their goods filled the air, but neither of them spoke. Finally, Kunal leaned forward and said something that surprised her. My father runs many community projects. There are schools, clinics, and training centers for people who need a chance. I can help you find work there. You will not have to beg or sleep on the street again. Ngozi's eyes widened. The words felt like a dream, too good to be real. Why would you do that? She asked quickly, suspicion rising in her heart. Rich men do not help girls like me. They only laugh or push us away. Kunal shook his head. I am not offering this because I pity you. I am offering because I see who you are. You are honest. You are hardworking. You deserve a chance. But Ngozi's heart was torn. All her life, she had been taught not to trust promises. Too many times, people had smiled at her only to use her later. She looked at him carefully, almost as if she could read his soul. And if this is a trick? If I go and they treat me the same way? Kunal did not answer with more words. Instead, he placed his hand on his chest and said, I give you my word. I will stand with you. The sincerity in his voice reached her. It was different from the empty promises she had heard before. Something in her heart softened, though she still held back her full trust. I do not know if I can believe you, she whispered. Then give me one chance, Kunal said simply. If I fail, you will know I am like the others. But if I keep my word, you will know not all rich men are the same. The moment was heavy. Ngozi lowered her eyes, feeling the weight of her fears fighting against a small flame of hope inside her. That flame had almost died many times in the past, but now it flickered again. Finally, she nodded slowly. One chance, she said quietly. Kunal smiled, not a smile of pride, but of relief. He had opened a door, and she had chosen to step toward it, even if only a little. From that day, something began to change. Ngozi followed Kunal to one of his father's community projects, a training center for young women. She was shy at first, afraid people would mock her, but Kunal stayed near, making sure she was treated with respect. For Ngozi, it felt like stepping into another world. She saw classrooms filled with books, sewing machines lined neatly in a workshop, and women laughing as they learned new skills. She touched the desk in front of her, unable to believe this could be real. For Kunal, it was a simple step, but for Ngozi, it was a chance of hope, a light in a life filled with darkness. As the sun set that evening, Ngozi sat quietly under a tree outside the center. She held a small booklet they had given her, running her fingers over the pages. Her heart was still cautious, still afraid, but for the first time in many months, she whispered to herself, maybe my life can change. Kunal, standing a short distance away, heard her words. He smiled gently. He knew this was only the beginning. Ngozi's life began to change slowly, like a seed pushing through the soil to find the sun. Each morning, she woke up with a new sense of purpose. The community project became her new home, a place where she could work, learn, and dream. At first, she was shy and kept her distance from others. Many of the women at the center came from better homes than she did, and some whispered about her when they thought she could not hear. They remembered her as the maid who had been thrown out of her mistress's house. But Ngozi did not allow their words to crush her. She remembered Kunal's voice when he said, "You are strong. Surviving is also strength." Those words gave her courage. She studied with all her heart, staying behind after classes to practice sewing, reading, and writing. While others grew tired and left, she kept working. Slowly, her teachers noticed her efforts. "She is special," one teacher said. She learns quickly and does not give up. Soon, even those who once mocked her began to see her differently. They saw how she carried herself with quiet confidence. They saw how she shared her little food with those who had none, and how she never complained, even when the work was hard. Respect grew where scorn once lived. Kunal often visited the center. Unlike other rich young men, he did not arrive with pride or show off his wealth. He greeted everyone politely, spoke kindly, and encouraged them. When he came, the faces of the workers lit up. But his eyes always searched for one person, Ngozi. He admired how focused she was, how she never wasted time. Sometimes he would sit beside her, asking what she had learned, and she would answer with a shy smile. One day, when she showed him a dress she had sewn with her own hands, Kunal clapped softly. "This is beautiful, Ngozi," he said. "Your hands create more than cloth. They create hope." His words made her heart warm, but she lowered her eyes, embarrassed. "I am only learning," she whispered. "You are not only learning," Kunal replied. "You are rising." As the months passed, Ngozi's progress amazed everyone. She not only learned sewing but also started helping the teachers explain lessons to newcomers. She became a leader without asking to be one. People trusted her because she spoke with honesty and treated them with kindness. News of her growth reached Kunal's family. At first, his mother was unsure. She came from a world of high society, where status and wealth were important. "Kunal, you spend so much time with this girl," she said carefully. "She is different from us." Kunal looked at his mother and smiled gently. "Yes, mother," he said. "She is different. That is what makes her special." Even the president, Kunal's father, began to hear about Ngozi. He was a man who often met ministers, leaders, and wealthy businessmen. Yet, when he heard of the maid who had become a symbol of hope in the project, he grew curious. One evening, during a visit to the center, he asked to meet her. Ngozi was nervous when Kunal led her to the president. She bowed her head, her hands trembling slightly. She had never spoken to someone so powerful. But the president studied her with kind eyes. "You are Ngozi?" he asked. "Yes, sir," she replied softly. "I have heard about you," the president said. "They say you work harder than anyone, that you are honest, and that you help others even when you have little yourself. This country needs more people like you." Ngozi could hardly believe his words. She felt tears gather in her eyes, but she held them back. For the first time, someone of power and importance saw her not as a maid, not as a beggar, but as a person of value. From that day, her respect grew even more. People in the city began to talk about her. Some said, "That is the girl the president praised." Others said, "She is proof that kindness and hard work can change a life." Through all this, Kunal remained close to her. Their friendship grew strong, built not on wealth or appearances but on trust and respect. He often asked her advice about the community projects. "What do the people really need?" he would ask. And Ngozi would answer honestly, speaking for those who had no voice. One evening, after a long day at the center, Ngozi and Kunal sat under a tree. The air was cool, and the stars shone brightly above them. "You have changed so much," Kunal said quietly. Ngozi smiled faintly. "Maybe. But it was not only me. You gave me the chance. Without that, I would still be on the street." Kunal shook his head. "I only opened the door. You are the one who walked through it." His words made her heart feel light. She realized that she was no longer the girl who cried by the roadside after being thrown out. She was no longer the maid who was mocked and treated without respect. She had risen above those days. She was stronger, wiser, and freer. And though her journey was far from over, she knew one thing with certainty: she was not alone anymore. Kunal believed in her, and that belief had given her wings. The world that once pushed her down was now beginning to lift her up. And for the first time in her life, Ngozi dared to dream, not small dreams of survival, but bigger dreams of change, of making life better not just for herself, but for others too. Her heart whispered the truth she now carried: she was rising, and nothing could stop her. Ngozi's days were no longer filled with sorrow. She woke up every morning with purpose in her heart. The community project that once welcomed her as a broken girl had now become her place of strength. She was no longer just a learner but a teacher, a guide, and a helper for many young girls who came with the same tears she once carried. When new girls arrived, weak and afraid, Ngozi greeted them with a warm smile. She remembered her own first days when she sat quietly in the corner, unsure if she belonged. She would take their hands and whisper, "You are safe here. You will rise." Those words became a light in their darkness. Slowly, the girls trusted her and began to dream again. Her story spread across the city. People spoke of the maid who had been thrown out like trash but had risen to become a voice of hope. They admired her for her courage, but what touched them most was her humility. She never claimed greatness for herself. Whenever anyone praised her, she would simply say, "It was not me alone. Kindness lifted me." Connell was always near, watching her growth with pride. He had seen her journey from tears to triumph, and he admired her even more than before. They spent hours together, planning ways to expand the project. Connell trusted her ideas, knowing she understood the struggles of the poor better than anyone else. One evening, as the sun set, Connell walked with Ngozi through the project grounds. Children were playing around them, their laughter filling the air. "Look at them," Connell said softly. "They laugh because of you. They have food because of you. They have hope because of you." Ngozi shook her head gently. "Not because of me," she replied. "Because you believed in me when no one else did. That belief gave me courage." Connell smiled. "And now your courage gives them courage. This is how change begins, with one heart, then another, until many are touched." Their bond grew stronger with each passing day. It was not built on wealth or power but on shared dreams and respect. The world around them began to notice. Newspapers wrote about Ngozi, calling her the girl who rose from ashes. Leaders visited the project and praised her for her service. But even with the attention, she stayed the same simple girl who once gave her last piece of bread to another hungry child. The mistress who had once thrown her out heard of her success. She felt both shock and shame. Some said she even tried to approach Ngozi, but Ngozi did not carry bitterness in her heart. "I forgive her," she told Connell quietly. "She gave me pain, but that pain led me here. Without it, I might not have found this path." The people admired her not only for her hard work but for her forgiving spirit. They saw a young woman who had every reason to hate, but instead chose to heal. That made her influence even stronger. Under her guidance, the project grew bigger. Schools were built, shelters were expanded, and more children found food and safety. Girls who once believed they had no future now held books in their hands. Boys who once wandered the streets aimlessly now dreamed of becoming doctors, teachers, and leaders. The president himself visited again. Standing before the people, he raised his voice and said, "This young woman has done more than many of us in power. She has reminded us that greatness does not come from money or title, but from kindness and courage." The crowd cheered, and Ngozi stood with tears in her eyes, never imagining she would one day be honored by the president himself. Yet, even with all the recognition, what meant the most to her were the small moments: the smile of a hungry child after a meal, the laughter of a girl who had found her first friend, the whisper of hope in someone's voice who once thought life had ended. Those moments were her true reward. As the years passed, Ngozi's life continued to blossom. She was no longer seen as a poor maid but as a leader, a sister, and an inspiration. People respected her not for riches but for her spirit. And beside her, Connell remained, not as a prince looking down on her, but as a friend and partner who believed in her strength. One night, as they stood together watching the stars, Connell turned to her and said, "Ngozi, do you see how the stars shine? That is how your life is. It shines for others to see, guiding them through their darkness." Ngozi smiled softly, her heart full. "Then let us keep shining, not for ourselves, but for all those who still need light." The world that once rejected her now embraced her. The girl who was once cast out now lifted others with her hands. Her life had changed forever, not because of riches or fame, but because someone believed in her, and because she chose to believe in herself. And so, Ngozi's name became a story told to children and whispered in homes, a reminder that no matter how low life pushes you, kindness and courage can lift you higher than you ever dreamed. Her new life was not just her own. It was a light that belonged to everyone she touched. And that light never faded.